Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
January 16, 2020, the Trump tried to kill the FCPA edition. Yes, you always knew he was pro-bribery. Well, he was so pro-bribery, Trump tried to unilaterally repeal the FCPA, apparently not understanding that congressional laws can only be repealed by Congress or overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. In the spring of 2017, Trump ordered Stephen Miller to unilaterally repeal draft an executive action to unilaterally repeal the FCPA. At that point, Rex Tillerson was still the Secretary of State, and Tillerson communicated to Miller that he had some skepticism about whether the plan would work. So for those who didn't think or were unsure whether Trump was pro-bribery, well, he is. So perhaps not surprising anything else he's engaged in. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, it reports that the Red Sox have fired manager Alex Cora. Cora was the bench coach who was involved in the cheating scheme and scandal at the Houston Astros. He was part of the duo of himself and Carlos Beltran, who came up with the sign stealing scheme. He apparently took that with him to Boston, and they employed that during the 2018 season when the Red Sox won the World Series. So we have Alex Cora involved in 2 teams, both with sign stealing, cheating scandals, both winning the World Series. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Major League Baseball does in terms of punishment for the Red Sox. The problem the Red Sox have is they were caught in August and September of 2017 utilizing Apple Watches to make these communications. Very hip, no doubt. Nevertheless, this makes them a recidivist, and Cora is a double recidivist. So it's going to be, the hammer's probably going to come down on Cora. Wouldn't be surprised to see a 5-year suspension, and what they do to the Red Sox, above and beyond what they did to the Astros, it's going to be open season. Next up, more bad news for Goldman Sachs as it lost about $1 billion of value, and 13% of the bank's profits were wiped out when it reported that it is reserving $2 billion to settle its part of the 1MDB scandal. For those who don't think there's any cost to bribery and corruption, this is incredibly instructive when you wipe out nearly 20% of your value because you've reported you're about to settle with the government. So big lesson from Goldman Sachs. It's going to be fascinating to see the continued fallout from not only Goldman Sachs's imbroglio around the FCPA, but the 1MDB scandal. And then finally, sometimes you just need a little petty cash around the house. And that's what we found out about a Chinese businessman. I really won't even try to pronounce his name. But it's actually a party official who was arrested with $22 million in cash at his house. So the question obviously begs the question, what's wrong with having a little petty cash hanging around the house, especially $22 million? Your wife might want to go shopping. You might want to treat yourself to a double latte at Starbucks. There's a wide variety of reasons to keep petty cash. You might want to tip the mailman. You might want to tip the paper boy. So I guess the moral of that story is don't keep petty cash around the house. In China, they might think you are a part of a bribery and corruption scheme. And in China, actually take those things pretty seriously for individuals. They have a 99% conviction rate for those who go to trial, and the appeal rate is even better for the government. So once again, petty cash, always a red flag around bribery and corruption. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks again for listening and joining us tomorrow.